To sincerely attempt to understand an Indigenous perspective means to dive into the modern, everyday lifestyles of tribal members while contextualizing their belief systems and cultural practices in light of centuries of freedoms and oppressions. Though the indigenous peoples of North and Central America possess distinct cultural heritage that cannot justly be simplified, themes regarding traditions shaped by physical environments, central mediums of storytelling, camaraderie through community, perspectives on rights and responsibilities, and resilience through adaptability bear striking significance across the board. Indigenous traditions are largely shaped by their physical environments. This was first demonstrated in our course by the cosmological celebrations at Shell Mound, which showed how Indigenous religious expression allows aspects of their spirituality to permeate into everyday living activities. Emphasizing cosmology and the maintenance of ecological balance, the relationship amongst Indigenous peoples and celestial bodies at Cedar Key illuminates motion throughout their lifestyles. While modern peoples may hold the natural environment to remain relatively static, various local landscape features such as ebbing and flowing tides, sand distributions along shifting shorelines, the proliferation of oyster reefs, and botanical health exhibited dynamic characteristics that evidence transformations in biotic and abiotic elements of ecological communities surrounding the Cedar Key area. Natives incorporated these natural features of the environment into spiritual beliefs, such as the prominence of summer and winter solstices. For the natives, the winter season allowed the sun to regain strength and replenish itself during the extended duration of dark nighttime skies. Much like the sun, humans were able to renew themselves during the time of the summer solstice by paying off debts and burying old conflicts. To maintain ecological harmony, Indigenous people also exercise sustainable resource usage. When we discussed the geology of the Mayan Empire, the Milpa system's strengths and weaknesses stood out to me as evidence of the importance of immediate collaboration towards flexible agricultural practices that account for changing climate and human needs. We can also follow the lead of the Mayans' resourcefulness and meshing of past and present worlds through non-agricultural instances, such as the existence of combination houses featuring traditional resources with modern appliances and electricity, with their agricultural practices of native crop cultivation to strike a balance between modernization and the preservation of sacred heritage. Another theme of dominant mediums of storytelling unites Indigenous beliefs about ecological harmony with their origin stories and concepts of ancestral lineage. For the Baniwa people, for example, sustainable natural resource usage is only part of the battle in maintaining balance. Contributing to an intergenerational dedication to preserving harmony throughout the cosmos, tribal members support empowered, highly trained leaders who act as spiritual mediators between the earthly and celestial realm. The expansive nature of shamans' experiences of becoming other enables leaders to fulfill a multi-generational dedication to promoting the health of the cosmos and the entities that enliven its interconnectivity throughout all realms and life forms. As highlighted in descriptions of becoming other, the experience of a shaman's transformation cannot be fully understood from a purely biochemical perspective. Uncovering symbolism that supplements biochemical effects allows shamanistic knowledge to be more deeply discerned by those of contrasting spiritual backgrounds. For the Baniwa people, becoming other is an empirically based experience, an absolute grounded in reality. Shamans' resolve to affirm spiritual transformations fundamentally strengthen the healing power of the individual and the community. The indigenous peoples of the Arctic, who are also dedicated to preserving the principles of seven-generation stewardship, consider the transfer of knowledge an honor and responsibility. Adapting to the ever-changing ways of their worlds requires native peoples to digest legitimate knowledge through observation and practice. Interpersonal relationships reveal patterns of confidence in and reverence for community leaders who devote their lives to instilling knowledge in their neighbors, who then continually and collectively disseminate insight to younger generations. Instruction through action can immediately instill a sense of gratitude and reciprocity amongst the creation Indigenous peoples cohabitate with. Serving as a form of education, teaching younger tribal members the value of maintaining harmony with their surroundings encourages generation upon generation to continue acting in accordance with the principles that govern the natural world through concentric ecology. The idea of Iwigara epitomizes these practices as it centers on the fact that we all come from the same breath of life, implying that changes in creation induce changes in society. The transmission of knowledge within Native American communities largely focuses on personal and communal experiences over multiple generations as a way to accumulate information about resource production and reproduction over time. This knowledge can then be applied as Indigenous peoples face novel situations. As called for by land-based religious practices, Native Americans have been living in reverence for the natural world for generations. In light of westward expansion and colonialism in the New World, however, Native Americans have been faced with European claims of land ownership that inherently compromise Indigenous regard for nature by holding profit above environmental stewardship. As global news headlines herald catastrophic climate change landmarks, another form of environmental and cultural destruction fails to garner widespread attention. For hundreds of years, Native Americans have faced wars waged by the United States government and private interest groups who claim rights to land Indigenous groups recognize as sacred. Mastering the Constitution's rhetoric that designates land as property owned by individuals, Native peoples have had to reconcile their beliefs about the significance of nature with the legal implications of claiming communal rights. The governmental delegations of these disputed areas is not to be taken lightly, as rulings can determine the fate of cornerstones of Indigenous groups' cultural heritage. Theologian Vine Deloria Jr. has advocated for spaces such as Matotipila as being inherently sacred, stemming from numerous experiences of, quote, revelations that tell you and your community how to adjust to the rest of the world, end quote. For Indigenous people, sacred spaces demarcate responsibilities for and connections with, quote, other people, ancestors, ecosystems, and spirits at the site they are defending, end quote. When Indigenous spirituality is blatantly overlooked or misunderstood, the validity of their ways of life are stripped away from them, as are their mediums of cross-generational cultural transmission. Forced to assimilate with those in power has also entailed speaking the language of the majority, which alters the dynamics amongst Indigenous people to this day. While the topics of resilience and adaptability are prominent themes throughout the course, they also serve as reminders that Indigenous communities are alive and strong today. Language revitalization efforts echo the fluidity of Indigenous cultural expression and reminds us that it is imperative to allow the trajectory of human rights campaigns or land rights lawsuits to remain in Indigenous people's hands, since it is their own cultural heritage that is at stake. Though the origins of language can be considered relics of times far gone, Indigenous traditions are shaped through the modern world's developments, and it should ultimately be up to tribal members to decide how to share their culture with the outside world. While Indigenous peoples' emphasis on traditions shaped by physical environments, central mediums of storytelling, camaraderie through community, perspectives on rights and responsibilities, and resilience and adaptability feature poignant cultural significance, it is important to embrace each tribe's full expression of their culture and practices through their respective lenses. Rather than generalizing a marginalized population, whether through appropriation or romanticization, I believe both Native Americans and non-Native populations can benefit from a deeper engagement and dialogue on their unique and shared perspectives in order to align our visions for the future. Raising a platform to amplify Native American voices beyond the reservation is key to allowing their values to permeate throughout the modern world and to better understand how trends of globalization and modernization touch traditional cultures.